For centuries, the Galactic Council believed itself to be the moral and political spine of civilized space, a vast union of species bound together by shared laws, shared resources, and shared power. Though the latter was always selectively applied, humans had entered the Council late, rising from a once-isolated death world on the edge of mapped space. And though they brought innovation, diplomacy, and stability to a galaxy forever teetering between cooperation and collapse, their presence was never fully welcomed. Some species admired them, some feared them, but far too many resented them. The friction began slowly, subtle at first, whispers across the diplomatic chambers about human influence, human audacity, human unpredictability, counselors from older species, those accustomed to millennia of unchallenged authority, grumbled that the newcomers were reshaping the galaxy too quickly, too decisively, too boldly. The humans were not just participants, they were catalysts. Yet the Council continued to rely on Earth for everything: defense fleets, relief expeditions, technology shared freely despite being decades ahead of standard galactic designs. Whenever unrest erupted on border worlds, it was humans who volunteered to intervene. Whenever starvation or plague struck, it was humans who launched convoys without waiting for permission. Whenever a crisis needed hearts, minds, or hands, it was humans who showed up. But gratitude was not a common trait among the elder species, and slowly a faction grew, one that believed humans had become a threat to their hegemony. They accused Earth of overstepping, of assuming too much authority, of acting independently of Council oversight. The humans countered with data, arguments, logic, but logic meant nothing when pride was wounded. So the accusations intensified, and soon the Council called for sanctions, restrictions, and audits on every human-led initiative. These hearings dragged on through months of bitter rhetoric, and though humanity complied with every demand, the tone had already turned poisonous. Some species spoke of sending inspectors to Earth, as if the cradle of humankind was some rogue outpost. Some suggested suspending humanity's voting rights altogether. Then came the tipping point. The Council passed a resolution effectively placing all human aid fleets under temporary collective oversight. A polite phrase masking a blatant power grab. Humanity protested, not with threats, but with calm logic, logic once again ignored. The vote passed anyway. Silence fell in the chamber, a cold kind of silence, the kind that precedes storms or endings. The human delegation looked at the Council, at the distrust, the arrogance, the blindness. And for the first time, they did not argue, they merely stood up, bowed respectfully, and said only 3 words. "We withdraw consent." And then humanity left the chamber, not in anger, but in absolute, terrifying silence. The next morning, every human embassy in Council space closed its doors. Entire outposts were vacated without warning, research stations emptied, humanitarian fleets stood down, and border world garrisons, once jointly staffed, were suddenly missing their human contingent. It was not spite, it was clarity. Humanity had complied with the Council's decision. They had withdrawn, they had stepped back exactly as demanded. At first, many Council species celebrated, calling it a victory for sovereignty and proper governance. They believed the galaxy would continue normally, smoothly, efficiently, without the overextended influence of Homo sapiens. They were wrong. Within days, the cracks began to appear. The first crisis struck the agricultural worlds of the Ventari cluster, where a fungal blight swept across crops essential to dozens of species. Normally, humans would have responded instantly with genetically tailored counteragents. Instead, silence. Ventari farmers begged for help, but without human biotech expertise, the response teams were helpless. Next came the piracy resurgence. Human patrols had long kept major trade routes stable through sheer deterrence. No pirate dared provoke a fleet that never lost a ship in a century. But with humans gone, raiders emerged like jackals sensing weakness. Entire convoys were plundered within a week. Council enforcement vessels, underfunded, outdated, and coordinated through committees rather than instincts, could not match them. Then the medical crisis hit. Dozens of species relied on human hospitals staffed by volunteers who specialized in xenobiology. Without them, waiting lists tripled, surgical complications soared, and outbreaks spread through stations that had once been models of health and order. By month's end, The council chambers were in chaos. No one had predicted how much humanity had been carrying, how many systems humans had been quietly maintaining, how many fires humans had been putting out before anyone else even saw smoke. The council called an emergency session, demanding humanity return to duty, but Earth's seat remained empty, untouched, unlit. The silence of that empty chair was deafening. Some species raged, accusing humans of sabotage. Others begged for forgiveness. Others still refused to admit fault, insisting that the situation would stabilize if given time. But as more sectors spiraled into disorder, as shortages worsened and tensions flared, no one could deny the truth. Humanity had never sought control. They had sought responsibility. And now, in their absence, the galaxy was forced to confront the weight of everything it had demanded they carry. The Council had wanted a galaxy without humans shaping it. Now they were living in one. It was the Threx dominion that finally broke. Their outer colonies suffered repeated pirate attacks, and without human advisors helping coordinate defense, entire mining worlds fell. Their desperate call for aid reached the Council, but bureaucratic delays cost them weeks. By the time help arrived, millions were displaced, thousands dead. The elder species blamed one another, accusing rivals of incompetence or withholding resources. The Council had always been fractious, but with humanity gone, the fractures deepened into canyons, alliances frayed, trust evaporated. Every crisis became a political battlefield, every delay a potential catastrophe. Meanwhile on Earth, humanity remained utterly silent. There were no angry broadcasts, no ultimatums, no military deployments. Humanity simply tended to its own people, strengthened internal infrastructure, and politely ignored the chaos outside. Some species interpreted the silence as smugness, others as cruelty, but they misunderstood. Humans had learned the most important lesson of diplomacy. You cannot save those who refuse to see themselves. Still, not all species were proud enough to deny reality. The Chirolan scientific guilds publicly admitted that half their research output depended on human partnerships. The Kajari Medical Alliance published a report stating that without humans, their survival rates had dropped catastrophically. Even the proud, ancient Vok, whose arrogance was unmatched, admitted privately that their border fleets had become overextended without human logistical support. Yet the Council refused to issue an official apology. They feared the precedent, they feared admitting fault, they feared the humiliation of acknowledging how deeply they had misjudged an entire species. And while they debated wording and responsibility, the galaxy sank deeper into the consequences of its own decision. Famine spread across worlds that had grown dependent on human agricultural support. Trade networks fractured without human navigators maintaining safe corridors. Rebel factions rose on planets where human peacekeepers had once kept rival clans at bay. Every problem had existed before, but humans had managed them, mitigated them, absorbed the shock. Now the shockwaves were hitting full force. The Council had always believed humans were unpredictable, dangerous, disruptive, but the truth became painfully, undeniably clear. Humanity had been the stabilizing force, the glue in a galaxy made of brittle pride, and without that glue the cracks were spreading. Soon they would reach the center. The turning point came when the Juluak superstorm formed along the Orion Arm, stretching across 3 inhabited systems. Historically, whenever a natural disaster threatened entire regions of space, humanity responded first, deploying advanced atmospheric stabilizers, planetary shields, and rapid response evacuation fleets. Without humans, the Council struggled to coordinate even the simplest logistics. Evacuation transports collided due to miscommunication, storm shelters malfunctioned, relief ships arrived with the wrong supplies. The disaster spiraled out of control, leaving billions at risk. That was when the Council finally broke its pride. It voted unanimously, humiliating though it was, to send an official plea to Earth. 3 words broadcast across every human frequency. "We need you." But Earth did not reply. The humans had withdrawn consent. The humans had stepped back. The humans had done exactly what the Council demanded. and now they watched quietly from afar as the Council faced the consequences it had brought upon itself. Desperate delegations were sent directly to Earth. The Council expected anger, expected negotiation, expected demands. Instead, they found kindness, patience, and polite hospitality. The humans welcomed them, fed them, treated their wounded. But when asked to return to their former duties, the humans merely responded, "Your council voted to limit our involvement. We are respecting your sovereignty." The councillors argued that the vote had been a mistake, that the galaxy was collapsing without them, that humanity had a moral obligation to help. But the humans simply asked, "Do you understand now what we carried?" There was no malice in their tone, just steady truth, and that truth struck deeper than any threat ever could. Negotiations stretched on for weeks, then months, but humans remained firm. They would not return unless the Council reformed itself completely, removing corrupt factions, redistributing responsibilities, and admitting publicly that humanity had been unfairly persecuted. For the elder species, it was unthinkable. For the younger species, it was overdue. For the ordinary citizens suffering across the galaxy, it was the only path forward. Eventually, the galaxy itself forced the Council's hand. Food riots on agricultural worlds, trade collapses, border wars reigniting, ecological disasters compounding each other. The galaxy was burning, and only one species knew how to extinguish the flames. Finally, after 4 months of debate, shame, and desperation, the Council held a historic vote. This time there were no factions, no grandstanding speeches, just raw necessity. They voted to dissolve the old Council entirely and rebuild it, with humans as equal architects. Only then did Earth break its silence. When humanity finally returned to the Council chambers, they did so without triumph, without anger, without spectacle. They came as partners, not saviors. Their silence had never been revenge. It had been a lesson, a mirror held up to a galaxy unwilling to see the truth. Rebuilding took years, but the changes were profound. Humans refused any exclusive control, instead designing new systems that distributed responsibility among all species. They established emergency response networks with transparent oversight, shared technological databases, and coordinated defense grids that required no single species to carry the burden. Most importantly, they instituted the Concordance Accords, laws ensuring that no species would ever again be punished for competence, innovation, or willingness to help. The galaxy slowly stabilized, worlds recovered from crises, trade resumed, and cooperation flourished among species that had once been too proud to speak to one another. Humanity guided, supported, and collaborated, but never dominated. Their influence came not from power, but from capability and trust earned through actions rather than demands. And because of that, something extraordinary happened. The elder species apologized, not performatively, not diplomatically, but sincerely. They acknowledged their arrogance, their fear, and their failures. They thanked humanity for stepping back rather than lashing out, for giving the galaxy space to understand its own weaknesses. And humanity simply smiled and said, "We never left, we only stepped aside." The new council, reborn, rebalanced, and wiser, carved those words into the central chamber wall, a reminder of the greatest lesson in galactic history. Strength is not proven by how loudly one roars, but by how quietly one endures. And so the galaxy prospered, no longer trembling in fear of humans, but standing proudly beside them. Because in the end, humanity had shown the truth. They had never been the galaxy's threat. They had been its foundation. And only when they stepped away did everyone finally see it.